I don't talk about this often, son. Some things that stayed back in 44 are better left buried. But since you're asking, maybe it's time. It all started long before we ever set foot on the beaches of Normandy. Back then, I was just a 20-year-old kid from Ohio who thought war was a kind of test of manhood. Steve and I grew up together. Same street, same school, same dreams. He was always the one who ran toward things. Ice, fire, trouble, didn't matter. Me, I'd hang back, think things through, hesitate. Truth is, I was scared. Scared to die, scared to be wrong. And Steve, he used to grin and say, "Come on, Tom, death doesn't bite." When the radio crackled that morning about Pearl Harbor, he was the first to say, "We're going." I followed. I always followed him. In training, he pulled me up more times than I can count. When I couldn't hit the target, he'd tap my shoulder and say, "You just don't believe in yourself yet." He had this way about him. Made you feel like nothing bad could ever happen when he was around, and maybe that's why it did. In North Africa, during Operation Torch, we were in the same unit. It was night, hot sand, strange stars, and then came the shelling. I didn't even see where it came from. One moment Steve was yelling at me to move, and the next, he shoved me hard, and then he was gone. They told me later it was instant, that he didn't suffer, but I swear I heard him breathing, trying to say something. I stayed alive, and he didn't. From that day, there was a kind of ringing silence inside me that never stopped. Months passed, years maybe, training, moving, new faces, new deaths. I did what I was told, but I felt hollow. Guys made friends. I kept my distance. Maybe I was afraid to lose someone again. Then, one night before D-Day, I couldn't sleep. We were on the ship, the sea black as tar. The waves hit the hull like fists. And then, clear as day, I heard someone whisper my name. "Tom." Soft, close, right by my ear. I turned around, but everyone was asleep, and I knew that voice. Steve always said my name like that, a slow drawl, like he was pulling me along. I told myself it was nerves, exhaustion, but my heart was pounding, like I was standing on the edge of something unseen. When we hit Omaha Beach, hell broke loose. The water boiled with bullets, the air screamed, and I ran. God, I ran. Men fell all around me, and I slipped on the wet rock, about to go down, when someone yanked my collar, hard, pulled me back. I hit the ground, gasping, and when I looked up, no one was there. But in the sand right in front of me, footprints, fresh ones. After the fight, when we finally secured the beach, I kept thinking about that moment. Maybe it was one of our guys. Maybe. Only everyone near me was dead. None of them could have grabbed me. That's when I thought about Steve. Then I shoved the thought away. Couldn't afford to lose my mind. Not there. Days later, we pushed deeper into France. The villages smelled like wet bread and smoke, and the people stared at us like we'd stepped out of another world. At night, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but because I kept hearing footsteps. Not loud, just steady, half a step behind me. When I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they moved. I told myself it was nerves again, but then things started happening that couldn't be explained by nerves. In Pest, near St. Lo, a storm hit. Black sky, rain like needles, no visibility at all. We lost contact with the next unit and got stuck between two hills where the Krauts were rumored to be dug in. I remember gripping my rifle so tight, my knuckles bled. And through all that noise, the wind, the rain, I heard it again. That same voice, calm, low. "Not that way, Tom. Go left." Left I turned, but there was no one. Still, I did what it said. Moved left. Not 30 seconds later, an artillery shell hit exactly where I'd been standing. The blast threw dirt and fire into the air, and I went down hard. When I came to, everything was ringing. My face wet, rain, blood. I don't know. I just sat there in the mud, shaking. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe not. Either way, I was alive. After that, I stopped trying to explain things. I just accepted them. Sometimes, at night, I could feel him near me. Not like a ghost story, no glowing lights or anything, just a pressure in the air, a stillness. Once I even talked to him. Whispered, "Steve, if you're here, why me?" No answer. But then a spark jumped from our dying campfire, and the flame came back to life. Tiny, but enough. I remember staring at it, thinking, maybe that was my answer. Some guys started noticing something different about me. One, Jackson, said, "You talk in your sleep, man." Like you're arguing with somebody. I laughed it off. Inside, though, I was scared. Not of dying, of losing my grip on what was real. Because how do you explain waking up to find your knife in your hand when you're sure you left it by the door, or the blanket tugged off you by something unseen? No, I didn't doubt anymore. Steve was there. Not a memory, not a dream, a shadow that walked beside me. The worst of it came near Carentan. July, heat, rot, smoke. We were crossing a field and suddenly I felt it, a chill, like a hand pressed right against my heart. I stopped walking. The others kept going. Then, out of nowhere, a fog rolled in, thick as milk. Couldn't see more than 2 steps. And through that fog, I saw a shape, not clear, but real enough to know who it was. That slouched shoulder, the tilt of his head. I'd know it anywhere. He didn't speak, just lifted his arm and pointed, right toward a barn off to the side. Then he was gone. I turned, and seconds later, the barn where the rest of the squad had gone up in flames, booby-trapped. If I'd gone with them, I'd have been gone too. I didn't question it after that. Nights got stranger. In dreams, he was alive again. We'd be sitting by the river, just talking about home, girls, cars. Then suddenly, everything would go dark, and he'd look straight at me and say, "You have to make it, Tom." For both of us, I'd wake up drenched, shaking, not sure if I was in the war or somewhere between worlds. By autumn, we were near St. Lo again, fighting like animals. The land itself seemed to scream. I lost more friends, and once again, I lived. That night, when the shooting finally stopped, I heard a low whistle, soft as breath, and in the dim light I saw something moving. A shimmer, like moonlight on water, just hanging there in front of me for a second, then fading. I knew it was him. I didn't even feel fear anymore, just this strange, heavy calm. From then on, I stopped doubting. Steve wasn't a hallucination or some dream cooked up by my brain. He was real, maybe not in flesh, but in something deeper. Every time death brushed past me, I felt his presence, not as terror, but as guidance. Even the smell sometimes, faint wet canvas and smoke, the smell of his jacket after rain. You can't explain that to anyone who wasn't there, but when you live through hell, you start seeing sparks of something beyond it. And I knew, then, he hadn't let go of me, not once. But what came after made me realize something I hadn't before. He wasn't just there to save me. He was leading me somewhere. And for the first time, I began to understand. Not when I lived, but when I should have died. I realized it at dawn. We were holed up inside what was left of an old abbey, its walls still breathing smoke and time. St. Lo was behind us, but the ground itself felt alive, humming with the memory of war. I was sitting there, cleaning my rifle, watching sunlight break through the cracks in the stone, thin golden lines cutting through dust and ruin. It felt like even God was searching for a way through it all. I was so tired, not just bone tired, but soul tired, like something inside me had worn through. And in that stillness, I heard his voice again. "You have to keep going, Tom. Not done yet." For the first time, I answered out loud, "I'm tired, Steve. I don't even know why I'm still here." No reply, just a soft draft, the smell of wet stone, a low hum that felt like breathing. That's when I knew. He wasn't going to let me stop until I finished whatever it was he'd started. A day later, they moved us up near the Ardennes. The cold there could cut through thought itself. We all knew something bad was coming. The Germans were regrouping. Those forests felt haunted even before the fighting began, Every step cracked like old bones under the snow, and yet through that cold, I could feel him stronger than ever. Sometimes, between the trees, I'd catch a shape, lighter than the shadows, gone the moment I blinked. A few of the boys mentioned it too. "Thought I saw someone back there," one said. I just nodded. How do you tell them your dead friend's walking beside you? That night, when the Battle of the Bulge began, the snow fell without a sound, like even nature didn't want to interrupt the dying. We were pinned down, cut off from command, ammo nearly gone. The order was simple: hold until morning. I sat there in the foxhole, rifle across my knees, and thought, this is it. Then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. Firm. Real. I turned around and there was no one. Only a trail of prints leading into the dark. I followed them. Didn't even think. My legs moved on their own. The snow crunched softer the farther I went, until I reached a narrow gap between two rocks. A kind of hollow, hidden from the line of fire. Inside was a dry corner, a box of old rations, and a broken radio. We got that thing working again somehow, called in for help. Nobody knew that place existed. Nobody but him. And that's when I stopped doubting for good. After that, I started writing things down. Scraps of paper, back of maps, old envelopes, notes about what I saw, what I felt. Not for anyone else. Just so I wouldn't forget. When I read them later, the words barely made sense. Shaky, smudged with dirt, like even the paper was afraid of what it carried. But the signs kept coming. A tree that shouldn't have been there, with dry branches when everything else was dead. A piece of metal that deflected a bullet I never saw coming. None of it made sense, until the day it all did. It was spring, 1945, somewhere near the Rhine. Germany smelled like dust and endings. We moved through a burned-out village, just looking for a place to rest. Inside one of the houses, half the roof missing, I found a photograph in a broken frame. 2 American soldiers in uniform. I froze. It was me and Steve. Same faces, same age, same everything. But that photo couldn't exist. He died 3 years earlier, in Africa. And yet there we were, standing side by side, a camp tent behind us that I recognized from France. The photo was coated in dust, but underneath were fresh fingerprints. I picked it up, and the air turned cold, like someone opened a door to the other side. Then, just above the sound of the wind, I heard him whisper, "Almost there, Tom." I dropped the picture. It fell face down. When I picked it up again, there were words written on the back, faint like soot. "You'll keep our promise." I never told anyone. Who'd believe it? But from that moment on, fear left me. I didn't march forward because I was ordered to. I went because I knew he was leading me. Not just away from death, toward something else, something bigger. When the war finally ended, they put us on a ship home. I can still smell the salt, the diesel, the cigarettes. Everyone was laughing, crying, shouting. I stood at the rail, staring at the water. The waves slapped the hull again and again, and in that rhythm I heard him one last time. "You did it, Tom." I wanted to answer, but my throat locked. I just watched the ocean until it went still. That's when I cried. Not because I was happy, but because I realized I was alone for real this time. But the story didn't end there. The war ended. The haunting didn't. I came home, got married, worked in a garage, raised kids. People said I was lucky. No scars, no limp, no nightmares. They didn't know. Every night I saw him. Sometimes just a figure in the doorway. Sometimes closer, never speaking. And every time I thought maybe I'd imagined it all, something would happen that brought him back. Once, years later, I was fixing up an old Chevy. Engine suddenly died. I popped the hood. The wiring had melted clean through, though I'd checked it an hour before. I bent down to look and saw something on the floor under the car. A bullet casing. .30 caliber, standard issue. I picked it up, and scratched into the side was a faint letter S. After that, I stopped questioning it. He wasn't gone. He was woven into everything. The smell of rain on pavement, the static hum of the radio, a whisper of cold air when the door closed on its own. It wasn't scary. It was comfort. Maybe he hadn't left at all. Maybe he was just waiting until I kept the promise we made that night before he died. I remembered it then, clear as yesterday, sitting by the fire, the desert sky above us, him saying, "If one of us doesn't make it back, the other carries both." That's what it meant. That's why I lived. In 1978, some journalist came around, young guy, full of energy. He was filming a documentary about old vets. He asked me, "Was there anything that happened in the war you still can't explain?" I told him, "Yeah. The fact that I'm still here." He laughed. "Guess you were lucky." And I said, "No, it wasn't luck. It was him." He went quiet, then turned on his recorder. I told him everything, the voice, the fog, the photograph. When I finished, he asked, "So you believe in ghosts?" And I said, "No, son. I believe in duty, and that death isn't the end." A week later, he came back, handed me a photo he'd taken while I was talking. I was sitting by the window, light behind me, and over my shoulder, there was another figure, faint, blurred, but clear enough. A hand rested on my shoulder. I was smiling in the picture. He asked, "Who's that?" I just shrugged. There's no point explaining things that can't be explained. Years rolled on. I got older. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud when I was alone, asking questions, saying thank you. Folks think old men talk to themselves, but I wasn't alone. I was talking to him, to my friend, to the man who died in the first days of the war, but never stopped walking beside me. And lately, I think maybe he was waiting for me to understand something simple, that he didn't just save me. We saved each other. The last time I felt him was this past summer. I was sitting on the porch, sun going down, air thick with cicadas. Then a breeze came, sudden, sharp, like a breath on my neck. I looked up and saw a man by the gate, faded army jacket. I couldn't see his face, just the shape of him against the light. He stood there a second, then nodded once, and I knew it was time. Not fear, not pain, just calm, like the long road home after a life of walking. Now I'm telling you this, son, and maybe you won't believe me. Maybe you shouldn't. But when your evening comes and you hear a voice in the wind, don't be afraid. It's not death. It's someone remembering. Because in war, nobody really dies. Not as long as someone still carries their name. I would have died if it weren't for Steve, who saved me again and again, even after he was gone. That's all that really matters. The rest belongs to the quiet places and to those who still walk beside us, unseen but never gone.